The church bell is tolling. You have come to the church of Kolyma. It is said that all are welcome, and that the monks living here often help those in need. Finding the door unlocked and unbarred, you enter the church. The Church of Kolyma is where its citizens come to pray, confess their sins, and offer a penance, usually in the form of a coin. You look over the Bible, which appears to be many decades old. You open it and find that an otherwise blank page at the front has been written on. It is dated over 20 years ago. You return the Bible to where you found it. You also notice that a page from the Bible has fallen onto the floor. You pick up the fallen page and read it. The words appear to have been written recently. Seconds swift were wisely spent, searching everywhere we went. The monk is dressed in a simple ankle-length robe. A belt of thick leather is tied around his ample waist. He wears worn sandals. The monk is in deep prayer and does not respond to your words. Feeling humbled, you kneel down to pray. You rise again after a few moments. The monk stirs, stands, and turns to face you.
Father, I go now to a place of darkness. While I am stout of heart, the path laid down before me is unclear. I seek only the knowledge that my passage be illuminated by heavenly favor, and a prayer that I may make it through.
The monk gives you a reassuring smile and pats you on the shoulder. He then lifts a silver cross from around his neck and places it in your hands.
Thank you.
You are welcome, my child.
You can talk?
Of course.
I thought monks were forbidden from speaking.
Not all churches follow the same rules, and this church is quite unique.
Really? How so?
The monk just smiles placidly at you.
About this crucifix.
I believe you will find the cross to be of immense value. It has come to us at a huge price.
It was expensive?
I mean that it has cost us more than any value to be in possession of it.
If I may ask, why is it that you only open the church at dusk?
We find the late hours more favorable.
Surely then you would not have many in your congregation.
Yes, that is true.
What do you know of the Count?
Only that he is a heathen, a blasphemer. You serve God well by going there, my child. Bless you.
The monk smiles at you, turns back to the altar, kneels, and resumes his prayers. This is the church cemetery. Given how many souls have been laid to rest over the many years, you imagine this place has seen its share of sorrow. Coco Airbul, 1205 to 1252. The writer wrote until he bled. In his final agony he said, "I will not lift my trusty pen till I at last have reached the end." La Fleur Provence, 905 to 987. The power brought unto this world is as unholy as this sage. Doomed are those that have descended from the blood of a first mage. Le Fleur Hamish Bite, 1226 to 1258. Besides religious connotation, reverence paid daily as we should, it is a tradesman's irony that a carpenter was killed upon the wood. Coco Herbu. This is Lester Williamson, 1300 to 1345. Here lies a man who feared all bugs, too scared to even lift his rugs. For if he had, he would have found insects that make little sound, with bites so deadly for their size that surely did cause his demise. Rarlap Niven, 985 to 1015. The jester joked his life away until a quip he made one day. Insulted was a baron's son who had this poor old jester hung. Rebecca Twintle, 1250 to 1273. In that usual daring way of hers, she threw caution to the wind. Late one eve she risked a venture, and went out to sea with him. Totally in love she was, so filled with careless whim, that when he threw her overboard, she never thought to swim. Goulash Thompson, 1370 to 1441. Never in all his living years had he ever seen such sights. For hours did he stare at them, those beautiful, dazzling lights. So happy was he that he had been able to live to see this night. But down a cliff he blindly fell, for the lights had been too bright. In this dark hole lies one brave soul, whose questing for glory has taken its toll. Charles Bucket, 1189 to 1232. He'd go out in the pouring rain, and risk becoming wet. He'd never dry off afterwards, so very sick he'd get. Here lies the Odnarb family. Evidently they were well respected to have their own area. Roust Odide, 943 to 1011. As I landed on my head, I said I should have stayed in bed instead. Here lies Liat O'Malif, 1200 to 1256. She was a lady with strange habits, who as friends kept only rabbits. When time came her hunger due, her friends all wound up in her stew. The other creatures, also bunnies, found this not remotely funny, so their swift revenge they sought. The kitchen in her sleep they brought, heaved her into the large pot, which was, regretfully, much too hot. Larman Odnarb, 1175 to 1200. Dear old Larman was a healer, cured many a deadly fever. One he caught that bitter day, healed not himself and passed away. Bridget O. Troublewater, 1248 to 1299. During the annual house inspection, she spied a mirror and its reflection. For days she lovingly gazed at it, unable to sleep or eat or sit. With the last of her earthly power, there she remained till her final hour. This is It is likely that only the most devout believers have been buried in there. Faith Cinders, 998 to 1029. Alas, my dear, you've come too near to your heart's great desire. It seems that now you've run afoul, and should not have lit that fire. Judas Morton, 1365 to 1415. Here lies a foolish non-believer, with shame deep is this hole. Even God, though wise and powerful, cannot save his wretched soul. You've never been terribly fond of gargoyles, and this one isn't likely to sway your opinion. Without warning, a pair of wolves dart out of the dark forest and dash towards you. For a minute there, you thought those wolves were going to attack. Curious as to why they didn't, you decide to follow them. You see the monk standing alone outside the church. Then you notice the two wolves approaching him. You are about to yell a warning to the monk, but the words die in your throat as the man steps forward and pats the wolves' heads.
No, my brothers, we must not hurt him. Not yet. He will go to the heathen's abode. He will do what needs to be done. What if he does not? Then, my brothers, we will complete the task before us, the one we began many years ago.
You quickly move away from the church, your heart racing faster with every step. You have a good idea now what will happen once the moon comes out in full, and you do not want to be anywhere near here when it does. One thing's for sure, you're not getting married in that church. You'll need to walk around.
Oh, sir, have you seen my little granddaughter? She ventured to the town to buy food for me, but has not yet returned. I fear she may be in peril. The forest is not safe at night.
You hear the sound of a child sobbing nearby. As you approach, you recognize the child. It is Possum, the little girl you helped earlier today.
Are you all right? What happened?
I went into town to buy some chicken soup for my grandma. I always try to reach home before dark, but this eve I lost my way and was attacked.
Attacked? A wolf attacked you?
No, not by a wolf, a dwarf.
For a moment, you're not sure that you heard correctly.
A dwarf, did you say?
Uh-huh. He jumped out at me, took my food, and then ran away.
Listen, I'm going to try to find this dwarf that you say stole your food. You get back to your grandma, understand?
Possum nods, says a soft thank you, and heads back home. What is this? There's a door built into the trunk of a large tree. It appears to be closed. You rap on the treehouse door and wait a moment, but get no response. You watch as a little man runs out of the door, which has been built into a tree. You surmise that you have found the culprit's home. The vague aroma of chicken soup confirms it. That fiend! Finding the door ajar, you cautiously open it and step inside the tree. This is a room inside the hollowed-out trunk of a large tree. A door goes to the outside. A narrow ladder leads down through a hole in the ground. You are in a musty underground passageway. There's a narrow ladder leading up through a hole in the ground. It seems you have entered the underground home of the thieving little dwarf. It is cozy, with a fire crackling in the hearth. A pot of chicken soup bubbles above the fire, giving a delicious aroma to the room. There is a trunk tucked away in the corner. A very sharp knife has been stabbed into the table. Its blade reflects the light from the burning fire. That's not a knife. The knife you found under a rock one time? Now that was a knife. You grab the handle of the bubbling pot of chicken soup. You take it with you. The elaborate display cabinet sitting to one side of the room looks heavy and expensive. You begin to wonder how the tiny dwarf managed to move it all the way down here by himself without damaging it. Some inexpensive-looking pictures decorate the shelves. The dwarf must have stolen these from a traveling merchant, as the designs on them look foreign. It is locked. This contraption looks like some sort of oven. It seems to draw heat from the fire, trapping it so that raw meat may be cooked at a much higher temperature. It's a large, empty barrel balancing on the rickety table. You notice the shelf is located quite high up on the wall for such a small dwarf. Then you see the barrel on the table, and things start to make sense. The dwarf must climb on it whenever he needs access to the shelf. Upon opening the trunk, you find a number of items that the dwarf has obviously stolen and stashed away. Among them are some gold coins. They display the distinctive face of the first king. They could only have come from the magic chest of Daventry. An old trunk rests in the corner of this hovel. You close the chest. You hear the sound of the door creaking, followed by someone descending the ladder in the next room. Thinking quickly, you hide in the trunk. The dwarf has entered his underground hovel. Hopefully, he won't discover you in here. You sense that the coast is clear again. It looks like the door creaked open again after the dwarf left. You hear the latch fall into place again as the door closes behind you. You'll need to walk around.
Welcome. Come in, please. Possum told me to expect you.
Grandma looks too weak to talk at length. Perhaps there's a way to make her feel better. You place the now cold chicken soup over the crackling fire once more. After it heats up to eating temperature, you remove it again. You offer the soup to Possum's grandma, introduce yourself, and wait courteously while the frail elderly lady eats the nourishing meal. When she is finished, she sets the empty bowl down elsewhere and turns her attention towards you.
If you would like to speak with me for a while, I would welcome your company. A person should never turn away a visitor, especially when she reaches the twilight of her life.
You can't help but feel a sense of finality in the old woman's words.
You must have something in return for your kindness. You do not need to risk your safety for an old, worn-out woman like myself. Look under the bed. You should find something to keep you a little warmer on a cold night like this.
You peer under the bed and find a thick black cloak. Lying atop it is a beautiful ruby-encrusted ring. You pick both up with reverence.
I could not possibly take these fine things from you.
Oh, please. I want you to have them. Nights in Kolyma are cold, believe me. As for the ring, well, perhaps it is better that I do not have it to remind me.
As you wish. You have a charming young granddaughter.
Grandma smiles at you graciously.
She is a treasure to me. I would do anything to ensure that no harm comes to her.
If I may inquire, what became of her parents?
Grandma frowns, and her eyes darken for a moment before she forces a melancholy smile to her face.
They were lost to us many years ago. I am afraid dear Possum never really knew her parents.
It must have been a daunting task raising a child by yourself, especially at your,
At my age? I am certainly not as young as I used to be, and there is no shame in that. I have tried to raise her as best I could, to keep her safe and well. However, I fear that as of late the reverse has become truer.
If you please, I was hoping you might tell me of the cloak and ring's origin.
The old woman closes her eyes as if the memory she seeks is painful to her senses.
They were my husband's. He was a proud man, the last of his line. His family had been rich, a great deal of old money you might say. They lived in that castle you might have seen to the north. Its location upon that island is evidence of how much they valued their privacy. He was a good man, my husband. He took care of me. Certainly he had his strange habits. Most men do, if you will pardon me for saying so. I suspect that he practiced magic, so I could never catch him in the act. He would frequently journey afar, taking that black cloak with him wherever he went, to places he would not talk about. He said that it represented something important to a certain group of people, and that I was never to mention it to anyone. But he was always there for me, always, until that fateful night. We had been married just over a year, and I was heavy with child. We were both out walking in the weirwood forest late one night. The air was warm, and in our youth we paid little attention to the world and its many dangers. Besides, there was a full moon. We could see clearly enough. A shadow passed over us. We looked up, thinking it might have been a stray cloud. It was not. Descending upon us like a demon was the largest, most hideous bat I had ever seen. Its fangs were bared and it dove straight for me. I must have screamed. My husband flung himself in front of me to protect me. He swung his arms about frantically in hopes of warding the horrid thing away. Perhaps he was trying to cast a spell, but could not recall how in his panic. It paid him no heed and would not be deterred. It swooped again and again relentlessly. At one point, my husband's hand must have clipped the bat's wing because it lost control and crashed into his shoulder. He tried to wrest the foul creature away, but then he shrieked suddenly. The horrid thing had bitten him. He never did recover from that incident. He just faded with each passing hour. Within 2 days of the attack, my husband had died. We buried him on his family's plantation on the island. Sometimes when I sleep, I can feel him watching over me, guarding me, protecting me. I think he is waiting for my time to come so we can be together always.
The old lady seems to be dozing off. You can barely hear her final words.
I miss him so.
Telling the story has clearly taken a great deal out of her. You watch the old woman a moment and notice her labored breathing as she sleeps. Despite the little girl's tireless daily efforts, perhaps there's nothing more to be done. It is a portrait of a young man. He looks somewhat familiar. The painting on the wall looks like an artist's depiction of the Kolyma landscape. You wonder who painted this. A beautiful vase is filled with pretty flowers. A beautiful vase. The little girl is fast asleep. You can see the beach when you look out the window. This is the home of Possum's grandma. It is comfortably furnished. Frilly curtains cover the windows, flowers are in the vases. The elderly woman is lying on a wooden bed in a cloud of pillows and coverlets. It is a simple yet comfortably soft bed. It is covered by a decorated quilt. A humble fire flickers in the small fireplace. What a disturbing thought. The elderly lady is sleeping. Do not wake her. Jabbing small children with sharp objects is not something you are, or wish to be, known for.
Sister Agatha, my dear, tell me you have good news.
The king has arrived in Kolyma, father.
That is not what I meant.
Yes. Well, he appears to be quite resourceful. It seems his reputation was not totally exaggerated.
He's still alive?
For now, but that will change soon, I think. The king has discovered that one of the gems he seeks is in the possession of a colleague of ours. Do you remember? Calador.
Yes. Is he still trustworthy?
Totally. Still sharp, and there's no questioning his loyalty. My humblest apologies, father, but would it not have been simpler for you to have dealt with Graham personally?
Fool! Imagine the ensuing chaos where Daventry's king murdered in his own land. How then would I be able to search for the item?
I see.
Failure is not an option.
Understood, father.
Keep me informed, preferably of good King Graham's death.
With a flourish, you fling the black cloak around your neck and fasten it. You are now wearing the beautiful ruby ring. Through the clearing, you can make out part of what appears to be a gloomy swamp. It does not seem overly welcoming to visitors.